To the story that writes back, day 3. So in this live series that I'm doing for 7 days, it consists of 3 things really. Reading a passage from Sozwik and then decoding it as a mirror for all of us, because good fiction mirrors deep lessons and themes applying to all of our lives. And then the third part is a little writing session, a little silent writing session together. So creating the space for us to do that. So those are the 3 parts of these lives. And then each of these 7 days has a different theme. So this whole week is a journey in and of itself. It's an arc. And today's theme, day 3, is into the wilderness or into the wild. And what this means is this is when you find yourself in a new world. This is when you find yourself in an unknown environment, in a strange environment. You might feel out of your element, like a fish out of water. Any situation that feels like that is this into the wild, into the wilderness phase. And like with the other themes, it could be on the macro scale, so it could be a period of months or years of your life, or it could just be a situation in one day where you feel that way, and it might last a couple minutes. So it applies on the micro and macro scale. So I'm going to start by reading a short passage from Sozwik about when he first comes to Earth. So for whoever's not familiar, Sozwik is a story about an extraterrestrial Sasquatch shaman who gets sent to Earth and finds himself in the middle of a spiritual war. All right? So I'm going to read when he first gets to Earth. And as a little context, and I'll get into this a little bit more after, but he experiences like waves of emotion. So like the awe and the euphoria of something new, but also the hopelessness and the fear and the doubt that comes with being in a new world. So you have those ups and downs, you have the yin and the yang of being in the wilderness in a new world. Okay, so this will be a quick excerpt, it's just a few paragraphs. Sozwik closed his eyes and attempted to reach out through the ethers, but there was nothing. Radio silence. It was as if there was a subtle and undetectable block. "I'll try again later," Sozwik muttered, compromising with himself. There was nothing else he could do now. The sense of urgency turned into helplessness, and helplessness turned into acceptance. And so it is. Since I can't communicate, I might as well physically survey where I am, Sozwik reasoned, almost to convince himself. With nothing else to do, Sozwik swept his worry aside, spent some time on the mountain and its neighboring peaks. He immersed himself in the environment and allowed the fluid wisdom of nature to guide him. Once he fully entered this state of flow, worlds of possibility opened to him. So like I said, he finds himself in this new world, which in his case is Earth. And there's waves of emotions. There is the excitement of the new, but also the doubt and the fear. And part of this part stood out to me, like the last part that I read. He immersed himself in the environment and allowed the fluid wisdom of nature to guide him. Once he fully entered this state of flow, worlds of possibility opened to him. So once he was able to not only accept the situation, but flow with nature, that's what opened his story up for him, opened his journey up for him. And since Sozwik is practiced in his shamanic tradition called Wakanri, he is pretty adept at navigating his emotions, but he still learning. He still goes through the doubts, and that's shown in this part because he goes through, when he first gets to Earth, when he first finds himself there, euphoria, and then it's doubt, and then it's the curiosity, and then it's more fear and doubt and worry. And then, with what I just read, he accepts and gets into flow state, and that's what opens up the next step of his story. So that's Sozwik into the wilderness. And here's something that's really interesting. And I realized this just a couple days ago. I had one of my into the wild or into the wilderness journeys while I was writing this. So for me, I got that idea for the first scene, not the first scene of the book, but the first scene that came to me as an idea. And it took me 1.5 years or almost 2 years to start writing the book. And I started writing this book while I was traveling the world. So I quit my corporate job, traveled the world, and that's when the message or the intuitive insight to, hey, you need to write that book. That's when that wouldn't leave me alone. So Sozwik going into the wilderness, ending up on this foreign planet, mirrored my journey. I was traveling the world. I was in a bunch of different places, lots of new experiences, lots of unfamiliar foreign environments. And that's when I started writing this. So that was my version of being into the wild. And I needed to quit my job to get there. I needed to muster up the courage to finally leave that world. And then I went into the world of traveling for a while. And that's what also had me fully commit to my spiritual journey too. Because before that, it was almost like it was a part-time thing where I was still like meditating and journaling and doing spiritual practices pretty much daily. But after I left my job and started traveling, that's when I was fully devoted to my spiritual journey. That's when it went from let's just call it, for lack of a better comparison, part-time to full-time. So it really created that. So with that departure and that new world, a new self emerged for me. And the same with Sozwik, and the same with really any good protagonist in fiction, and the same with you. It happens to all of us. So we all go through these seasons or phases. Because like I said, going into the wilderness could be just a situation that you encounter during your day on the micro scale. Or it could be a phase of life that lasts months or years. So what are some other examples of going into the wild or the wilderness? Maybe and it depends on the person too. For some people, it's going away to college. That's like a big deal. For other people, that's more of a natural thing. For some people, it's going out of college and getting a job in the real world. Oh, I liked college. I had a good time. Now I have to get a job and act like an adult with responsibilities. That's a huge change for some people, going into the wild that way. Could be having a kid. It could be getting a new job. Even a job that's like maybe a different career. Or maybe you feel like you're in over your head. Like, how did I land this leadership role? I don't know if I'm qualified. And you're like figuring it out as you go. That's being in the wilderness too. So there are a lot of manifestations of this. And then there's the daily manifestations. Anytime where you find yourself in the unknown. Anytime where you feel like a fish out of water or you're in over your head. And just know that you will experience those waves of different emotions. You might find that curiosity and excitement of the new, but also some fear and trepidation and self-doubt. And the key is not to try to suppress it, it's to let it flow and then move in your highest direction regardless. And then there's the flip side of you can turn any unknown adventure, any trip into the wilderness into an advantage by applying that kind of skill and with curiosity and with having a higher purpose that is your North Star that you follow. By being present, you can navigate through the wilderness. By being grateful for the new. So instead of complaining like, oh, this is unfamiliar to me or this is uncomfortable, hey, I'm grateful for this new stuff. Like you're in a new role at work that's overwhelming. Okay, I'm grateful that I got this promotion or I got this career change instead of I can't handle it and complaining. So there are different ways to navigate it with mastery, whatever you're going through, because like with everything in life, it's not about what happens, it's about what you make of it and the meaning you assign and the context, even the subconscious context you put around the situation. So stories and knowing these archetypes helps make that subconscious stuff more conscious, because you're like, oh, I'm kind of in that archetypal environment, and you bring awareness to it, and then you can recontextualize it. You can assign new meaning to it, and that's a powerful thing. I think that's all I got on this for the decodement of that phase. And I have a good journaling prompt for this, writing prompt, whatever you want to call it. So for the writing session, it's going to be, what wilderness are you afraid to enter right now? And now before we get into the writing session, you can get a notebook or open up a document wherever you want to write. And again, like the last 2 days, you can use the writing prompt to go off of, or you could work on whatever you feel called to work on. Maybe you have a project that you're working on that you want to work on, right? That you want to write, get into flow state. Because it is a different experience when you're held in a space with other people. It's a different writing experience. Sometimes you go deeper with it. So the choice is up to you. So again, the writing prompt is, what wilderness are you afraid to enter right now? And I'll give you a couple examples before we get into the 5-minute writing session. So it could be things that are blatant. Like it could be like, you need to leave your job, but you're afraid to do it. You need to leave your relationship, but you're afraid to do it. You need to cut that friend off who's been, draining your energy and whatever, but you're afraid to do it. Those are the more obvious ones. But then there's more like even inner world type of things. Like maybe you're afraid to be fully yourself. Maybe you're afraid to express your joy at your work or in your work. Maybe you're afraid to really let your personality emerge when you create content, if you're creating content. Maybe you're afraid to really own your unique skills. Maybe you write poetry or something, and maybe you're afraid to own that, hey, I write poetry, and it might be really good. So it could be those little inner dynamics that are the wilderness that you're afraid to enter, like fully owning your uniqueness could be that. For me right now, it's a new level of leadership. It's heart-centered leadership. So it's not just the creation and the solitude and the meditation and the journaling and those inner spiritual practices that are solo. For me, what I'm being called to is heart-centered leadership. So this is one example of it, doing these lives. Putting together my community is an example of that. Because part of me has little doubts around that. Like, oh, am I magnetic enough? Are people magnetized to the way I speak and all that? So that comes up for me, but I do it anyway, because I recognize, okay, there's going to be doubts. They may or may not be valid, but they're going to be doubts. So I'll let that pass by, and I'm going to act according to my highest timeline anyway. Okay, so let's get into this writing session. 5 minutes. The prompt one more time is, what is the wilderness that you're afraid to enter right now? And also, you can write whatever you want. So we're going to do 5 minutes here, silent writing session, and then I'll remind you when the 5 minutes are up, and we'll close this out. Let's do it. Let's flow. All right, just a few more seconds. And you could leave yourself a note to come back to, or you could keep flowing if you want to. All right. And to wrap this up, you can get Sozwik at sozwik.com. There's actually 2 books. And that's, I think, so far, Sozwik and Sozwik Book 2 are like my magnum opus. It was such a journey writing those and putting those out. And I'm never going to stop talking about it. And I'm working on turning it into a possible movie, perhaps a TV series, but I feel like a movie is where it's at now. So if you have any ideas or any people you're connected with, feel free to send them my way because I'm trying to get that made. And then also I have the Soulful Writing Collective. That is a group, a community, a living network of conscious creators whose writings are spiritual transmissions. So it could be poetry, song lyrics, stories, anything, really anything that's mythopoetic and spiritually activating in the form of writing. And the purpose is to come together and to help each other spread our work. And also do things like decode our work together, find the deeper meanings, and then through collaboration and sharing what's working and not working, to stop having our work be suppressed or feeling invisible and things like that. Because I know this is something that a lot of people who write these like spiritual transmissions that are ahead of our time, writing things that most of society doesn't get, because most of society wants like the cheap stuff, the surface level stuff. So writing the deep stuff that maybe most people won't get or aren't ready yet, it's like ahead of the time. So people like that need these networks. And I really feel like instead of chasing views or popularity, or instead of like bowing to the old guard institutions, it's not really about that. It's about creating an intimate network that's almost like the first ripple, of the ripple effect. And in doing that, we, like I said, we help decode each other's work. We share what's working for us and what's not working. So that creates the first ripple. And then you build momentum. And then you get the second ripple out, which is more people and readers. And then the third ripple. And who knows, it could get picked up by an old guard institution, but that's not the goal. It could go viral, but that's not the goal. It's creating new ways of doing this. Because I've been involved in traditional marketing, digital marketing. I taught courses about it, and I was a content manager for that. And I'm a copywriter too. So I know all the traditional marketing stuff, and it just feels off in most cases. And it doesn't work as well for like the true spiritual transmissions. But beyond even the working, if you're doing stuff like this, like creating spiritual transmissions, you don't want to do the cheesy copy-paste marketing and sales stuff. There are different ways that we can experiment with and share with each other. So that's a part of it too. Not copy-pasting some weird marketing tactics, but finding different, more authentic ways of going about it. And I don't want it to be all about marketing either, but that's a big part because it's getting your work out. So that's a little bit about the Soulful Writing Collective too. I'll share the link wherever I can for that, and the link's in my bio on most platforms too. And besides that, I'm going to wrap this up. Tomorrow is, what's the theme tomorrow? Hold up, let me look it up. The theme tomorrow is, where is it? The deepening. Okay, tomorrow's the deepening. I'll leave it at that. I'll leave a little mystery to it because we're going to go deeper into the adventure. All right, see y'all tomorrow at the same time. Sending you lots of love and gratitude. Thank you, thank you, thank you.